Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the upcoming edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome, guys.
Hi, welcome back, David.
Welcome back. Well, thank you. Yeah, after my little reprieve, sabbatical, it's great to be back here in Humboldt, where there's actually cool air, and I know it just feels like home here. So thanks for, like I said, thanks for holding down the fort while I was out.
Well, David is back. Thad and I have haircuts. Nature is healing.
Yeah, exactly. I actually commented him on Dapper do. Not so much on my end, but he's sporting the new do, and you too. So this is good. So I guess it wouldn't be the COVID era without us diving right into some story about COVID. You guys have done a cover story this week that is a memorial. Thad, you want to tell us a little bit about what you guys worked on for this week's cover story?
Yeah, so this week marks the first anniversary of Humboldt County's first COVID death. And so for a while, we've kind of had an idea of wanting to do this story. But what we did was we tried to do as thorough an accounting as we could of all local residents that we've lost to COVID over the past year. And so we requested from the Humboldt County Coroner's Office, which is by law has to be notified of these deaths, for kind of a list, and got that from them, and then went about kind of tracking down as much information as we could find about each of these people through obituaries, through contacting family members and talking to them, things like that.
So I got an advanced copy of this, which you guys provide me, which is great, which I appreciate, and I'm just curious, after reading through all these folks, each story has its own kernel of tragedy and insight, but also something worth celebrating. What stood out to you? I mean, I think you guys both have some insights. So you want to give a start that and tell me kind of what stood out to you as you guys prepared this memorial list.
I think just the cumulative loss, and I think that while we've all felt that and known of it and in various ways, I think that, the way that COVID deaths have been reported in Humboldt County, and necessarily because public health can't be giving out kind of private personal health information and stuff like that. But there's been a very sterilizing effect in that when they've announced deaths, they haven't really announced any information about the person, just, kind of the age demographic. And so, hearing each of these stories individually, and about these people's lives, and in most cases very full lives with circles of loved ones and social support networks and things like that. You really, for me anyway, it really hit home just kind of the reverberating impact of these losses for each of them and the people in their lives.
And so how about you, Jennifer? Same question. What kind of stood out to you as you guys prepared this list and kind of got to see how the families and folks that were impacted in the last year during COVID?
Well, I went through the product of Thad's work, and I also talked to him on the phone while he was spending a week or 2 weeks combing through obituaries and calling people who'd lost loved ones. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school by saying that it was a lot. And I think it was a kind of a small, a microcosm version of what a lot of journalists have been doing and what we've all been doing by, being immersed in this. And really, we don't have anywhere to go with all of this like loss and grief. We can't have funerals. We can't, hug each other. Because we were both vaccinated, I finally got to hug a friend who lost her mom recently. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, this is a thing that we've all not done for more than, almost 600,000 people. And some of these people struck me because, they were people that we knew tangentially or otherwise, a journal family member, journal staff member's dad is among them. Ida Newell, the first person in Humboldt who died of COVID, was somebody that I interviewed a while back for a story about Roy's and the restaurant Roy's. And then, she's a relative of Mark McKenna, a frequent photography contributor for us. And then some of them struck me because, like, Brian Smith was 38.
Yeah.
And, 30, I'm looking at 38 in the rearview mirror here. So, like, 38 feels impossibly young for this, especially when we're continually told, oh, it's just older people who are dying. But even those lives, these people, just because they made it to 82, 90, 64, at what point do we say this, well, that's just how it goes. And then there were some people, I think what really kind of broke my heart, cold and dark though it is, was at the very end, there were some John and Jane Doe. Some of these folks, who's there to mourn them in the midst of all of this, all of the national tragedy and the local tragedy, in all of this chaos and all this separation. There are people who get lost to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. One thing is, as Jen kind of noted, that really hit me in talking to some of the families is the impact of that isolation, that forced isolation, and not being able to grieve in a normal way, and not being able to get together and have services. And I can't tell you how many times I read in an obituary, a service will be held when it's safe to do so, or no service will be held. But then also just how the trauma of families not being able to be there with their loved ones when they make that transition into what's next, and not being able to sit by their hospital bed and hold their hand, or kind of hold vigil at bedside and those kinds of things. And even for folks who had loved ones passed away, and in the earlier part of this year, so it's been almost a year since that loss. It just still seems so fresh to them over the phone, that that trauma of feeling like they couldn't be there, not being able to be there.
And I think, we've been thinking about obituaries before this. The Journal now does free obituaries online. And so we've been looking at them more and thinking about what obituaries mean. And some of these are just like, I can't believe I didn't get to meet this person. Like these interesting, funny people, like Howard Edward White. Howard Edward White, who apparently decided in retirement to go to the casino every day and sit next to you, chat you up, and whatever team you're rooting for on TV, he would root against.
The troll spirit lives on.
Yeah. I mean, analog trolling, lost art.
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead, Thad.
I was just going to say, along the same lines, one that really touched me is the story of Charles Irwin Davis, who I got the privilege of talking to his granddaughter. But he was a retired bank technician. He would travel around the North Coast fixing bank machines at, I think it was Bank of America, and had kind of these quirky interests of genealogy and military history and stuff like that. But one of his great passions was jokes, and so he took like the dad joke thing to a whole different level, and would make like subject specific joke books for his grandkids. And so for one of them, he made, one of his daughters is blonde, and so he made an entire book of blonde jokes for her son, for his grandson, so he could troll his daughter, which I thought was hilarious.
It is weird that we are both sort of wistful over the trolls.
It speaks fast. The other one that I would say really spoke to me was William Andy Beck, who it sounds like a very deeply religious man. He was drove, I think, construction equipment for a living, but had just this caretaker spirit that the obituary that I found about him really focused on. And he was the caretaker for his parents in their final days, and then had worked as a nurse in his youth, but just really kind of captured that giving nature of his.
When I rudely interrupted you earlier, I was just going to mention that, I recently was traveling in the Western states and got to speak with some folks who have a somewhat different perspective than maybe we have here, or my peer group, or people I'm more closely, in alignment with when I speak with them on things like this. And I just reminded people that, look, depending on the math and the day of the year, whatever, over 1 out of every 600 people in America has died from COVID. So it's not like it's something that can be reduced to how you feel about it. There are objective truths here. And that's a shocking number. And then if you break it down by age, I'm not going to get into the numbers, but once you break it down by age, there's a century of shared experience that some of these people had. Some of them were in their 90s and 100 even. I think one person was over 100 here in Humboldt who passed away. So all those stories, all those experiences, all those lives touched. One of the people on your list had, I think, like 10 kids and 20 odd grandkids and God knows how many great grandkids or whatever. I mean, I saw the numbers and I apologize, I don't remember exactly. But we're talking about hundreds of people in their immediate families, let alone the importance that they had on the community. So in light of that, I think it's appropriate to just kind of mention that you guys also shared with me an editorial that you prepared as an organization, I guess. Maybe I'm not sure. Thad, you can tell me a little bit about what went into that and kind of what the message is for the community here at this time.
Yeah, so it was co-signed by all three of the journal editors. So Jennifer, myself, and then our digital editor Kim Weir. And it was kind of just trying. I guess the thrust of it was just trying to address kind of the conflicting emotions of this moment in time, where so many of us have been vaccinated. The state is kind of barreling towards a reopening in mid-June. And it's really become clear that the vaccine is going to be the mitigation measure moving forward, and that a lot of the public health protocols that have kept us safe for a long time now here just are going to go away. And so I think, and that inherently means that we're going to see more illness and that people are going to continue getting sick. And while there, I think, is a great amount of hope for those of us who are vaccinated, and I think everybody about what kind of reopening and reentering a new normal, there's also this inherent risk and this, this cumulative loss that we've all felt that was captured in this cover story. And so I think the thing that we tried to focus on with the editorial is really saying that, unlike most of these 40-something people who passed away locally and their families, that we all now have a choice. There is an abundance of vaccine locally, and everybody, 12 and up is now eligible to go get a shot. And so that's a tremendous privilege that we have that most of the folks we lost didn't, that most folks in other parts of the world don't have. And we just really want folks to reflect on that and, reflect on it as both as a personal health decision, but then also a communal decision. And it's very clear that the more of us are vaccinated, the less disease there will be around locally, and the fewer people we're going to lose from this moving forward.
And I think, if we also added into our usual tagline saying where you can contact us and where you can send your angry emails. We added in that we're fully vaccinated. Both, Thad and Kim and I are all vaccinated. And, my youngest became eligible for the 12 and up vaccine. And, we went for that too. And we're on the first day that we could do it. And I guess it's our way of encouraging people by saying, showing that we are, we're doing this. We're putting our money where our mouth is, and that we trust it. And we feel like it's the best way going forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. I'm glad we're all vaccinated. I think, I think we've talked, everybody I've talked to recently since I've been back, it seems to be, for even the people that were skeptical, sort of on the merits, on the science, not just for some hypothetical philosophical reason, but people who were skeptical are now starting to see the evidence of safety and the evidence of efficacy. And there is this momentum building towards it. I know it's a little outside of the scope of what you guys covered this week, but since I was away for a few weeks, I noticed that there are quite a few cases here in the last 3 weeks, and I think it's some of the highest rates in the state. I don't really know what happened. I haven't really been in the loop recently. I don't know if that, can you just share with us a little bit about what seems to be happening?
Yeah, our numbers are in the bottom 3 counties of California's 58 regarding both case rates and test positivity rates. And it's hard to exactly put our finger on why that is. There was a couple super spreader events a couple months ago. One of them linked to a Eureka church that certainly contributed, but they're not responsible for the entire spike in case rates. The UK variant, the B1117 variant, that is said to be up to 50% more contagious, is prevalent now on the North Coast as it is in much of California, and so that's certainly playing a role. But I think the prevailing sentiment from public health is that people are tired and people aren't following protocols, and unvaccinated people are doing things that are known to be unsafe, which is mingling in each other's households, having gatherings, not staying masked and distanced. So if people are kind of like right on the fence where they're getting enough information to reconsider, is there I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but where can people go if they don't have their own doctor with a strong, solid, regular relationship, like a lot of folks don't because of our horrifically non-universal coverage? What resources are available here for people to get more information to help them decide to move forward? So yeah, for folks if folks are lucky enough to have a primary care provider, they should contact them directly and speak to their offices. But if they don't, the county Joint Information Center is still operating and offering information and pointing people toward resources. So that number is 441-5000. And then I would say, if folks if the vaccination is the question, then any major hospital, whether it's St. Joe's or Children's Hospital down in the Bay Area, or any academically related research institution, has COVID vaccine information on their homepages, and it's easy to find. A lot of them have fact sheets that are very understandable. There's a plethora of good information out there from reliable sources if people want to find it. Well, thank you both for your hard work in this area, illuminating and encouraging. I appreciate it. Thanks, David. So Jennifer, let's pivot over to you on this. I know it took up a little more time than planned. What is the news on the arts and features beat?
Well, this week I wrote a story about a kind of a little tumult that's happening in our community. Every story is a food story. So I don't know. Have you ever been to New England? And a pet story, as it were. And a pet story. That's true. That's the overlapping circles of our interests. So have you ever been to Newland Glen Farm Stand?
No, I only saw the pictures that you guys shared with me.
So when you go over to the Freshwater Farms Reserve, which if you haven't been, you absolutely should. It's beautiful. It's got working pasture and it's got marshland and you can walk on these trails through it. But as you enter, there is a farm stand and it kind of straddles both sides of the roadway that you walk in. But on the left is this tiny little building that looks like, I don't know, kind of Beatrix pottery. It's covered in vines and whatnot. And inside there are products from 30 different local vendors. So it might be some herbal tinctures that somebody is making out of, flowers and herbs that they grow. It might be, locally raised meat. It could be locally baked bread, somebody who's making pies in their kitchen. And I spoke to some of the providers or the producers that made all that stuff, and also the owner of the business, because the owner of the business is looking at eviction. And that eviction stems from a number of instances where she violated her lease by having her small 14-pound dog off its leash, or the dog's name is Tootsie. Tootsie was either off her leash or was not supposed to be on the property at all. She had chased a jogger and also bitten a cyclist. And so given that the North Coast Regional Land Trust, which owns the reserve and rents her the shop space, given that their mission is very much about accessibility and safety, and given that it's a pretty big liability issue to have a dog off its leash, and particularly one with, that maybe bit somebody.
Yeah.
They warned her again and again, but she kept bringing the dog, kept allowing it off the leash. There were about, 3 or 4 instances. And then even while they were trying to decide what to do, how to move forward, she brought the dog again when she wasn't supposed to. And for her, she's very insistent that while she admits that she broke the lease and she did what she should not have, and she, owns that, she was saying like, oh, she didn't do this out of malice, right? That it was just, she's a soft touch when it comes to the dog who's, she says, ill. And she's had, some personal problems and some health issues. And she said to me that she had basically a nervous breakdown and made poor choices. But, regardless of what the root of those choices are, the reality is that the lease has been broken multiple times. And now the land trust is having her move out by the end of the month. And right now she's hoping, she's kind of making a Hail Mary pass to stay, or at least have an extension on the eviction so that she can have more time to move her crops out, or, harvest the crops that are planted and move out her goats. There's goats. But I don't know that that's going to work out. We'll see what's going to happen. It seems like the relationship has really been broken with her and the land trust. But my question was also, what's going to happen to all the people who are vendors in this site? For some of them, like the Humboldt Baking Company, 50% of his sales move through that shop. The granny behind Granny Be Jammin', Cindy Hubbard, she runs like, what did she tell me? I feel like I have to look at the number again because I just could not believe it. She moves 250 to 300 Granny Be Jammin' pies a month through that shop, and like 5 to 10 cases of jam and jelly. Granny Be Jammin'.
And these are affordable pies too, right? Like these are worth driving up the hill for.
Yeah, these are actually really cheap. And that's part of the strange thing about the setup is the markup on the pies is like $1, when most retail you'd be looking at like $5 or more, right? You'd be looking at like a 50% to 100% markup in there. A lot of the vendors kind of, as she described it to me, Kathy Mullen, the owner of the shop, kind of tip her out based like a sort of a loose commission, kind of a, well, let's see how much money I made and how much I can pay you for your sales. And she's said before that she has to occasionally dip into her Social Security to keep it going. And she was like, oh, but it works. And I said to her in our conversation, I was like, have you considered that if you're dipping into your Social Security, it does not work?
Right.
And she said, no, because everyone's happy. So it's a really, I think part of her relationship, or her relationship to the vendors and to the community, is very much about heart and very much about feeling and connection and, personal bonds. And, that means doing things like letting people garden in beds on the property when that's not allowed in the lease. She's allowed to have beds to garden in that are associated with the stand, but she can't just let other people come in. So there have been a lot of decisions that she's made with her heart that have not been, in the end, good business decisions. But on the upside, there was also, I think, that personal relationship and the sort of community hub feeling that's developed at the stand, particularly over the pandemic. That closeness that she feels with the community is part of the reason that, dozens of people went to the land trust office over the weekend and had a protest with signs and everything, trying to have them, allow her to stay on and try and fight the eviction. However, I spoke to Dan Ayersman of North Coast Regional Land Trust, and what he said to me is that while he doesn't see a path forward with Kathy Mullen, someone else could take over the stand and, work with different producers and keep a farm stand going there on the property. And the rent is under $500, so it's a pretty enticing deal. So the hope now is kind of that someone else will step in and take it over, and that these vendors who are, producing all kinds of local goods and the people who really want to buy them will have a place to connect.
Well, let's hope that that's how this goes down, that ultimately all these vendors do have access to an outlet, and that farm stand stays alive in more than just spirit.
Yeah, let's hope.
Thank you for covering this. I appreciate it. I know that we all want the best for all those folks involved. This is just about going to do it for us this week. North Coast Journal's on newsstands now, available online. Pick one up, stay informed, stay entertained, stay safe. And Thad and Jennifer, thank you so much. See you guys again next week.
Thanks, David.
See you next
week.
Be well.